so good. And then in like the 3rd season or something, there was the writer's strike. This is okay. So we are recording, but I'll trim it up to start with. Yeah, press both buttons. But I always start the interviews with like conversation and then come in. But the writers' strike in the US, I'm not sure if it went global, but
not quite. But
you can tell in all of the old TV shows they either stopped entirely and died, or suddenly they were completely just broken from then on out. So Supernatural was a victim of that.
Yeah, Buffy. The end of Buffy, you can tell there was a bit in there where you're like, what the?
Heroes was another one.
Okay.
Heroes was a big one because the moment that the writer's strike happened, it's like they never came back on board. What was another? There were a few really bad ones that was great. Everyone was hooked on it, and then the writers left,
destroyed it.
And then it just all unraveled. I feel like that's what happened at the end of Game of Thrones. No, but that wasn't the writers' strikes, and got no excuse.
Well, I read an interesting theory about that, and I kind of tend to come down in agreements with it, despite everything. What they did is they had a character-driven arc for the first 7 series.
Yeah.
But because they'd committed to making only 8 series, and they weren't willing to change their mind, and they probably couldn't have got funding, to be perfectly honest, and with George not getting his books out, and what they turned into a series 8 is a plot-driven. And you can see the difference. So this is something you can keep on there as a tip for writers. Pick one.
Yes.
You can't do both.
No.
And don't swap and change, because that's the kind of outcome you end up. Character-driven, and that's why we all love the characters. Plot-driven, they had to get to certain points, and so they just made the plot fit.
Yes.
And it shows because you didn't have that character development that allowed for that believability.
Yeah.
And no matter, I think we all knew Daenerys was going to end up.
Yeah.
But it was too fast because they were plot driven, right?
Yeah.
And the character allowing
they
to
also
get down that path.
Like, to get the dramatic scenes they were after, they just disregarded years of training that the characters had visibly undergone.
Yeah.
My mum watched it, and she was fully on board. She binged the whole thing because it came out just after she started binging it. And even she said something felt off about that last season.
And that's what, I read all the other stuff and the petition and all the rest of it. But when I read that one, I went, they've nailed it. That is exactly the change and why we're all a bit hinky. Even those who love it and those who understand and who understand writing and things like that kind of go, it didn't fit right because they completely changed the delivery model.
Yeah. So, just for your information, this is Becky Paroz.
Hi.
Becky Paroz is the author name on her book. And it is one of the single most quotable books. I think last year we tested this. We could open it to any page, read any line, and you could basically turn that into a motivational quote for your social media. So if you need some social media feed, and if you need to just have a boost in the day, her book is amazing. Words of Beck. Now I have a question. What's a good plot-driven story that you have seen?
Oh, a good plot-driven story.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one.
Are you talking like books or TV? Cause
you know what? TV is written, right?
Yeah,
so I think we can talk TV. If we've got a book example, that'll be really good. But people don't realise how much is written, how much has a writer behind it, and how versatile writers can be in that situation. Yeah. So I've got one for a movie, Avatar. Not the Last Airbender. That we don't talk about that movie.
What movie?
Yeah, exactly.
No, the first Avatar. That would be
Blue Alien Avatar.
Yeah.
That is plot driven.
That is plot driven.
We cannot remember. I don't remember any of the names of the characters. I don't remember any of the quotes that they used.
Not really.
But I remember every time I watched it, I cried. Like, it brought emotions up in me because of that colonizer injustice theme.
Yeah, well, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
I remember the theme and the point it was trying to make, rather than, as you said, just about anything else except blue people and some flying
I remember
creatures that weren't quite dragons.
I remember the key scenes where it's like he gets his own blue body They have the beautiful tree, they have the felling of their home tree, and then they have the final battle. Like, I remember those big plot points, but besides that, I remember the name Navi, and that was the people, and the moon was Pandora.
True.
So I remember key words, but that's a plot-driven movie, which I think is why a lot of people rag out on it as well, because they're like, oh, it's just Pocahontas but reskinned with aliens, but it's not. It's still
it's got a little bit more context and texture than that. And
yeah,
it's probably a little bit more, and it's much more about colonisation in a greater scale, but also tying into things like climate change and the impact of civilization on a global scale.
The impact of capitalism on the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's sort of, which makes me kind of go back to Fern Gully, which
childhood classic.
Well, also shows my age because there's so many people alive now listening to this who weren't born then. But in terms of plot, that's what it is. Like, I think how you determine plot is it's about the story that happens, not the people, and you can insert almost any other person. So if you're not attached to the actor that was in that,
Sigourney Weaver.
I love Sigourney Weaver. Like, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
But anyone could have played her role in that. It wasn't a particularly Sigourney Weaver owned role. And that's how you tell the difference between your character and your plot. If you're not attached to the characters, but you love the story and remember the story, it's a plot-driven story.
Yeah.
You're attached to those characters, and it's all about, like we love Daenerys, going back to Game of Thrones, character-driven, not plot-driven until the end, as we just said.
And I think that's what happened with the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise too. The first 3 movies, they have strong plot, but they are character-driven.
It's very hard to do a movie with Johnny Depp and not have it become character-driven in some ways.
Yeah.
Like, you can still have the plot,
and
he's done some plot-driven, like Water for Chocolate was one.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he appears, he has that much charisma and screen persona. I think it does overshadow and becomes rather character-driven.
I think Keira Knightley and a couple of the other side characters as well, so a lot of the pirates have a similar impact, but Johnny Depp being a main character in it had that bigger impact.
He takes over the screen no matter what he's on, because he's just that good an actor, and we have no comment about his personal life whatsoever in that segment.
But I think in what movie are they up to now? They were doing 6. They've got 4 and 5.
Oh, I've lost count.
Anyway, 4 and 5 became plot driven. They were all about a cool story, and that's where it really felt like it lost that powerful impact that made you sit in the cinema seat for 3 hours waiting for, you couldn't leave because the movie was so good, but you really needed to pay.
And they had reduced screen time for Johnny Depp in those too, so you kind of got both. You don't have that big character overshadowing everyone, and then you've got this plot, so it's almost like, what did happen in that? So I'm sure there's plenty out there, but you caught me on the hop and going, I'm
trying to think of some other really good ones. What would you say Harry Potter is?
Oh, see, you caught me out. I don't like Harry Potter.
Oh no! Well, you know what? Harry Potter is.
I was a bit old.
Problematic.
Well,
but
yes. Look, as always, I gave it a try and read it, but because I am such an avid reader and have been reading for so long, and was a little bit older than the audience that Harry Potter was aimed at.
Yeah.
I read the first book and went, I've actually read this book 28 times. Written better.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't keep going with the series.
The Worst Witch. If anyone needs a different version, they don't want to lean on Harry Potter anymore, The Worst Witch is amazing. And it does all the exact same things. A magical school, disadvantaged student, rich bully, and a lot of flying. So you've got broomsticks and magic and all of that still in there. And it's all still based in the UK. So, but written well and character driven.
Yeah, Harry Potter also has the only distinction of being a movie I fell asleep in the cinema while watching.
No.
I went and watched it by myself, which may be an excuse, but I have seen other movies by myself, and I fell asleep during it. So I'm just, me and Harry Potter.
Not best friends.
One of the things I could bring up is Sookie Stackhouse novels versus the True Blood TV series. Now, there's a lot of divergence. But the books are plot driven. Even though there's a lot of big characters and you wouldn't think so necessarily, the books are plot driven, because when she got to the last book, she was very clear in that some people might not like where this has gone, but this has always been the outcome she was aiming for.
Did you feel like that was true? Do you feel like she just made that up in the last book?
No, I don't think she made up in the last book. I'm not convinced that was where it was going at the start. But perhaps somewhere through there she was like, no, this is how it's happening.
Because I never felt like she lined it up very well. I don't know. No,
but there's a few things she didn't line up very well. I mean, there's not a lot of consistency between some of the books.
Yeah. There weren't enough stitches sewed prior in the plot for me to feel like that ending was
the overall outcome.
It felt like she was doing like a straight stitch and all of a sudden she's gone off and done hemming.
Well, I guess the only defense to that is so the story arc of Jason, is that the brother?
Yes.
Yeah. So spoiler alert: in the book, there's a weird tiger arc.
Yes. Yeah.
Completely left out of and not touched. It kind of goes there, but then takes it away.
Yeah, they go Web Panther.
Web Panther, yeah. But there's a whole arc about him actually being immersed in that society. And when you read that arc, there's a lot of inconsistencies because when we're talking about the second book, when that particular arc started, there's some contradictions to what happened in the first book. And I actually, because I am that guy, went back and had a look and was like,
You've got your series detective board out.
Yeah, I was like, you've got it wrong, damn it, I hate that. Plus I also kind of binge read them because I found True Blood first.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, when you got, which was better? True Blood is the one I sit on the fence about. And Sookie Stackhouse, because I love True Blood. And the character, talk about character driven.
Yeah.
It's all about the characters.
Yeah.
And the characters in there aren't necessarily characters that appear throughout the entire series of the books. And, we all love Eric, but, Lafayette, just a glorious character. He was in half a book.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
very, very minor.
I remember.
And none of the flamboyancy and the contribution that he made to the series.
No.
So I adore the series because of the characters. But I found I understood the series when I started reading the books because there was a lot more depth in the books. I kind of went, oh, that's why she looks like an airhead some of the times. It's the voices in her head, and I hadn't kind of made that correlation.
Yeah.
Because frankly, probably Sookie Stackhouse is one of the more annoying characters in the series on TV until she kind of gets that character development. But, again, TV series character driven, book series very much plot driven. Like she had a direction she was going in, and that was consistent. It's just some of the side stories weren't so consistent.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that she did have that intent, but I think she just isn't good at consistency. And because of the amount of side stories over the 14 books, I think she just kind of forgot to lay some of those seeds.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually leads us on to one of our sponsors. So firstly, we're at Performance Studios here. Thank you for Performance Studios for lending us their beautiful podcasting room. They have microphones set up. We've got the phone attached to this ring light. Maybe a little bit broken.
Very comfortable chair.
Very comfy chair. Even the wooden one here, very comfy. And soundproof as well for the most part. So if you want to do any audiobook recording, come here. And secondly, if you need to keep track of plot points, our major sponsor for this year is actually the Novel Factory, which are a fantastic software that I use to do the entire Wolflock Cases series, and it would actually help you keep track of those issues so that you could have consistency.
Yeah,
because when you are doing a long series, so how long is the Sookie Stackhouse series? It's like 10 books.
No, it's about 14.
14
maybe
books,
16, I'd have to count, but it's about 14, I think, yeah.
You know what, I got a wrapped box set, so it's wrapped in plastic. But they're not, I don't know how they wrap this in plastic because that is not the books that are meant to be in there because we've got two of the same book in there and none of them are in order. So I have no idea what box set I got.
Well, the other thing too with a lot of box sets is you've got to be careful where you buy them from because the names we have in Australia that we expect are not the same names in the US.
Yeah.
Because every time I go through my series, I think I'm missing one.
Yeah.
Because she talks about this next one coming out and it's a different name.
Yeah.
So you could end up with that, or maybe you've got a really unique series that will be worth a bit. But yeah, nothing annoys me as a reader more than not being consistent with an author. It's like you built this world, you wrote these characters, you developed this. How can you not remember that they got red hair last book and not this book, or or whatever. It's a bugbear.
Yeah.
So
if you realise that you've been inconsistent, so if you've actually put out a book en masse, this is a benefit of self-publishing because you can go back. I remember I did a fairy once and I gave him a long pointy nose, but that's commonly been used for like slanderous against Jewish people. So I was like, okay, I'm not making this essentially post office obsessed brownie fairy have a long pointy nose. So I gave him a short stubby nose, but in the same book I'd written it 2 different ways, and I was able to in the next print change that and make sure that I was more appropriate and gave him the look that I wanted him to have rather than something that could be misconstrued as offensive.
And people go looking for offence these days too, so
they do.
You don't want to make it easy for people.
No, and I always make my intentions very public, which I think is really important when you're doing your books, because intention is everything, as we've seen from plenty of artists that have been like, well, I'm sorry I did that, I'll fix it. Or the opposing one, which is, I didn't do anything wrong and I don't know why you're getting up in arms.
And I think that's, in this day and age, that's not a great tactic to take.
No.
I was mentored by Zoe Carmody for a while for some of my writing. Amazing, absolutely. Recommend her books. If you haven't read any of them, just grab one because they're all fantastic.
I got the first 3 Obba Newton Chronicles as a prize for being good in year 6 and was obsessed with them, and when I met her at Supernova, I was just like, oh my god, this is you!
Yeah, I know. Lifelong dream to meet her and then to actually be mentored by her for my writing. It was just spectacular. And she was a bit more casual about it, I must say. She was kind of like, you know what, readers live for that sort of stuff, so it makes them feel really good if they find it too. So always be open to just letting them happen in your writing and allowing your readers to find them, because it gives them a sort of a sense of ownership. And then if you want to fix it, fix it. But she was a bit more blasé about it. But then, so you can be when you're an award-winning, multi-published, extensive library. When we're all newbies, we kind of tend to want to be a little bit more careful, I think.
Yeah, you want to set yourself up right. It's all about, I don't want to talk about branding, but it's about how you want to be seen.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that be part of who you are naturally as a person. Otherwise, it's exhausting.
Well, and it comes across as inauthentic too. You know? There's a lot of inauthenticity out there that we can smell a mile away these days. We're all kind of a bit cynical. We're all looking for the CGI mistake and the, hey, he had his jacket on last time and he didn't have it on this shot. And, we're a bit designed around that these days, I think. So it just doesn't work if you're not, as well as being exhausting, but it just, people pick up on it and they think you're hiding something, or they think that you're not being honest instead of just trying to project a persona. So definitely make it about that. When I did my training for presentation speaking, they basically said pick 3 characteristics that you naturally have. And that's what you amplify around.
Yeah.
And
that's the
speaking, that's great. But I think also for author persona and branding, that's a good start.
You're being more of you.
Yeah, exactly. Amplify 3 key things. So if you sort of, if you're funny, if you're loud, and if you're foreign, then, Akmal or Salid, all those comedians that you've immediately kind of thought of. They've amplified some obvious characteristics about themselves, and most comedians do. So I think that's a good piece of advice to writers. Is kind of pick who you are, pick 3 characteristics that you're really quite enamoured of yourself, that you like and you're very comfortable with, and use those as the start of your persona and brand build. You can always add more, and you can always create depth as you develop, but that's a really good start to make it easy to kind of kick off, who am I to the world? Yeah,
absolutely. So you're releasing a book around the Writers' Festival, and I've already spoken to Talia and Sandy, and I am super excited. So anthologies are Beck's thing. She is the queen of anthologies in Logan, and so
probably.
You know what? You have that crown now. If you don't get laureate this year,
I'm totally wearing it.
So. Tell us a bit about the anthology that's being released.
Well, it just happens to coincide, and this was just one of those things with our theme of growth and resilience this year. So it's called The Power to Rise, and we're just in the final stages. We're going to do a soft launch at the Logan Writers Festival, so it will be the first time you can grab a hard copy.
Excellent.
We may have the e-copy, it just depends on whether I get to that, because I'm currently helping the editor, Sandy Davies, produce it. And it's stories from around the world. It's 30 women from various walks of life. We have about 30% of First Nation representation, which is so fantastic.
Great.
And we're doing it in places like Guam and Hawaii and some really unusual places that kind of aren't on your tourist map. As well as quite a few writers from here in Brisbane locally. And we all are sharing stories of trauma, bullying, childhood experiences that are pretty tough to contemplate and think about, and how we kind of overcame them, and offering insights into what life is like beyond that, because we realise there's a lot of unspoken stories, but also too, when we don't share our stories, we are perpetuating the success of the people who can undertake these acts, and we're not helping the victims who experience it, because everyone thinks they're alone when they go through these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So we're really looking at shining a light into those sort of dark places and offering a path out and away from what you've experienced, to kind of show that it's not, the sum of who you need to be, and that is not necessarily how your life needs to turn out or reflect in any way. So super inspirational. Every time I read the stories, I just kind of am like blown away at what some of these women have experienced and overcome, and then gone on to be, amazing doctors and healers, senior businesswomen, and so there's a couple of stories in there from people who aren't writers but felt really strongly they wanted to share because of the topic and outcome of this book. So there is some heavy reading in it. We do have a trigger warning at the start because we cover a lot of topics that are tough, but ultimately this is a book about inspiration and overcoming and hope, hence the name The Power to Rise, and the dragonfly on the front, sort of representing all of that sort of aspirational material. So so really exciting, very powerful, and we can't wait to have it in our hands, and then be able to share it around on the weekend of the Writers' Festival.
Oh, it is going to be so exciting to have that there. And it's just absolutely perfect that it was coming out this year, when I was just on the fly. I'm like, you know what? Last year we had the first chapter as the festival theme, and this year it's growth and resilience, because after everything we've been through the last few years,
times,
oh my god, unprecedented needs to be just taken out of the normal dictionary. Use it only for legal stuff. I've heard it way too much lately.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just the global sort of pandemic situation. It's also the fact that Australia's been through bushfires, and a lot of people forget that just before that pandemic hit, half of Australia was under fire. Yeah. And we've lost resources. There are people who still aren't in their houses, despite what we've all been through from that. Yeah. And then we've had repeat floods for 2 years, New South Wales and Brisbane, Queensland particularly. And again, there are people from a couple of years ago when we had flooding who still haven't recovered. We were in a drought situation. Places like Stanthorpe had their dam empty and people were trucking water in, and we've gone from that to an overabundance of water. Yeah. And it's not just the dreaded C word. It's a whole lot of other environmental circumstances and global environments contributing to what has just been a really couple of tough years, and we've all needed to find that resilience and experience some sort of growth as businesses have changed and pivoted. That's my word I hate. We're all going to pivot. You know what? The voice of Blinky Bill, Robin Moore, lives in Tasmania, and she was like, pivot means you're standing in the one spot, turning around in a circle. Mm-hmm. But what they do is they have those big sailing races that come down from like Cairns or wherever. And they sail all along the coast of Australia to Hobart or somewhere. Sydney to Hobart.
Yeah, Sydney to Hobart, that's it. And what they do is when they're against the current, they zigzag, and they call it tacking. Yeah. So you're still moving forward, but you have to change your direction in order to move forward. So tacking is so much better than pivoting.
Yeah, because I had the same thing. I'm an engineer, so a pivot is one point that you just turn around. So that really frustrated me, because I'm a writer and I like the words to be specific and reflect their meaning. But then we have that with buzzwords, don't we? Buzzwords take on their own meaning. You know, I was using the word empowerment long before it became the buzzword that it is, and it frustrates me when, you know, that has a meaning for everyone. I'm like, well, I understand that it does because we have our own contextualization about words, but it still has a meaning, and that's the basis of the meaning. It's just, it's such a writer thing, isn't it? It's like, but that's not the right word.
The bane of my existence is that every word has an etymology. Every word has a history and a birthplace and a meaning. And now you can't actually use that. It's called a logical fallacy to use the precise historical meaning of a word in an argument because it's not the intended meaning. But when someone takes a word like fear and then they turn it into an anagram, and they're like, the meaning of fear is forget everything and run, or that sort of thing. Face everything and rise. And I'm like, that is not the meaning.
No.
It has an English root word.
Yes. Coaches are great for doing that.
Oh, I hate it. It makes me cringe.
And same with that word empowerment. You know, it's a word that coaches use. I've just done an article on it recently in a magazine because I also write for a couple of magazines. And it's one of my sort of pet hates because empowerment is about power and who owns it and who's wielding it. Self-empowerment is when you own your own power and you wield it, and that's what I'm all about. Empowerment as a word is someone giving you power. And I actually, like most people, treat the word as if it means the exact opposite and you're empowering yourself. And there's a distinction that I kind of, I get this little eye twitch there when it's like, I'm all about empowering other women. I'm not about empowering other women. I'm about teaching other women to feel empowered.
Yeah.
And there's a very big distinction in that. But anyway, like I said, it's a writer thing as much as anything else. These words have meaning, and
it's a manifesting thing as well. As someone who's very witchy, ever since I was little, I was always very careful with the words that I said, because whenever I said a bad thing, it was totally coincidence, but it would happen.
Intent is everything.
Yeah, and so in that moment when I'm feeling the bad thing and I say the bad words and then the bad thing happens and then I feel bad that it happened, I'm like, okay, I'm pulling back from that. Be careful what you wish for.
You just might get it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, I wish that I had $1 million. Well, your family member dropped dead and you were their primary inheritant.
Yeah, well, the monkey's paw, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a great old story exactly about that. And I'm not going to tell anyone about it. Look it up.
It's only short. It's really short.
Really, really short story, but one of the creepiest tales ever told.
It's also
it's very
free.
much a moral lesson.
It's free domain. So after you read it, you can use it freely in your own stories. It is. It's public domain because it's out of copyright. Yeah. It's amazing. It's a really good example of plot driven.
Yes.
I don't remember the characters, but I remember all of the instances that occur.
Yeah. Well, all fairy tales, from my perspective, are plot driven.
Yes.
The evil stepmother, the fairy godmother, apart from the main protagonist who's been given a name just so we simply identify
them. They're normally quite blank.
Prince Charming, the handsome prince,
Yeah.
Yeah, the mum who gets angry at what's his name who buys the beans.
Jack.
Yeah. See, I don't remember Jack's name unless I have to. It was an interesting. I actually withdrew from being in an anthology because of a point of difference over this.
Really?
This guy was editing my work, and I'd written it like a traditional fairy tale. So I referred to the evil stepmom and the fairy godmother, and only the main character was named. It was actually space pirates. Like, it was epic. I'd been watching something about androids and in space, so I kind of threw that into my fairy tale retelling. Excuse me. But I literally and deliberately only named the main character because that's how a traditional fairy tale. He went off his nana about, you've got to give them a name, and have you ever read fairy tales before? And I was like, I am not going to dignify that with a response because I own 3 different versions of the Grimm's fairy tales for a start. And I've read them all multiple times. I just kind of went, this is a fundamental difference in fairy tales. I'm not going to change your mind. But equally, I'm not going to be changed. I'm not compromising what I think is a proper fairy tale to fit in your anthology.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of other, sort of, I suppose, belief problems. Swearing was okay in there, but we're going to label it YA. And, just a few things. I'm like, no, this isn't right for me. and so withdrew from it. I still have that fairy tale, which is now turned into my book series that I want to write. So never throw any material out, because it always comes back to haunt you in some manner of speaking, and you will reuse it. So that little, space android, space pirates kind of central character has now become a vastly different character, but she is modelled on where the fairy tale started. So, that's where you have that. Which is why I'm thinking maybe I need to look at that novel Factory Software a bit more, because
it's so good.
I've picked 13 just as a number to see how we go and kind of give myself a limit, because it's based on, they say write what you know, so it's based around construction, and I've got 30 years in construction, so I've got way more than 13 stories to tell. I just kind of went, number out of the hat, right, that's what we'll aim for. I think 13 is probably too many, it might be a bit ambitious. But hence some software that might actually help. So
you've got to be able to tie it in together. You've got to have a series Bible.
And look, I've got the world map. I've done a lot of plotting on it. What I haven't done is a lot of writing on it.
Oh no, you've got world builder sickness.
Well, I've got the first 2/3 of the first book written.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a bit of reading about this. Apparently there is a slump period right around there, because you've written the book and it's not quite what you wanted, because it never is, and you know the ending, but there's that bit, how do I get there?
Yeah.
And so I've hit that, and then we've had the last couple of years, so I'm kind of building my enthusiasm back up for going and getting back into that, and kind of trying to kick that off again, because I really do want to write this series.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'm doing short stories and short things for some professional magazines, and anthologies will always be my thing. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, tell us a bit about the workshop you'll be doing at the Logan Writers Festival this year.
Okay. Well, as I've just said, I've got 30 years in construction, so I've got a lot of tools for organisation, project management, and driving outcomes. And projects are kind of the definition of a project is something that has a start and finish point with a completed objective. Sounds like a book. And so because of my rather unique perspective, I've kind of channeled a lot of project management principles into how to organise and manage your publishing journey. And so it's going to be really compressed and condensed, because I've got 30 years of experience and I've got to try and somehow put that into 1.5 hours. However, you'll get some really good stuff out of it in terms of kind of some high-level organisation techniques, some ways of thinking about your book that maybe you hadn't or hadn't really come across of. And some of these can actually be used to help move your plot or move your characters. When we think about kind of, some people get stuck, the character's sitting somewhere and doesn't know how to get from here to the next point. Some of the techniques that are in the project management world you can actually use to ask yourself some different questions in order to kind of free up that flow and get your character moving.
Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. So, we have cost in projects, like how much does it cost, how much are we actually spending, that sort of thing, are we making a profit? So, but if you sort of apply cost to your world and your world building and your character where they're sitting, how do they earn money? Is money a thing in this world?
Mm-hmm.
How do they exchange goods? How do they obtain the tools they need in order to achieve the goals? And people don't often just ask that question just about cash.
Yeah.
Because we either make an assumption that it just happens and there's not a lot of detail, or we're in this world and we're emulating sort of the cash society and cash-based finance system that we have. But when you world build, it could be something different. It could be a barter system. It could be an exchange system. It could be a, find a pretty rock and convince them it's worth something system. And then there's plenty of others out there that we could talk about. But if your character's stuck because he can't get a certain tool, then ask yourself how the money changes hands. How he can earn the money, where he's going to get the money from. Does he steal a purse? Does he find wealth? Does he go and work for it? And if he's working for it, how does that delay your story? And how can you incorporate that delay into either increasing tension or anxiety or introducing the new character that you need? And so see how just by starting to talk about the exchange of value, which in project management we call cost, you've just opened up a whole other couple of avenues that you can kind of explore with your character And hopefully we'll get over that sort of writer's block and that point that you're stuck at.
It gives them conflict, which is what drives the story.
Yeah.
Absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. You know what? I love the nitty gritty behind all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we've hit at least 40 minutes, 44. So if you want to hear more of Beck, if you want to speak to her at the Logan Writers Festival or any more, please come along 9th and 10th of September. And where else can people find you, Beck?
They can find me online at wordsofbeck, BEK.com.au. Facebook is /Planet Beckstar, again BEKSTAR, because I always like the idea of having a planet named after me. Or I'm often liking things on our Logan Writers Festival page, so if you go and follow that page, not only will you get
one of the
updates,
best supporters.
well, you've got to be in it to support it, don't you? Like, this is what we do. This is the idea of these types of festivals. We're actually supporting writers. So so if you go and stalk our page, not only will you get great festival updates, you'll be able to find me there.
Oh, wonderful. Well, come see Beck. Her workshop is going to be phenomenal, and if you are actually serious about being an author, it will be the perfect one for you. So I think you're talking on the Sunday? The Saturday, sorry?
The Saturday, I think so.
I think you're on the
10 o'clock?
Yeah, I think so. It's either, I'm pretty sure, because we're not on at the same time this year.
Yes, no competing this year. Yeah,
awesome.
But the schedule will be out soon, so again, look for it on our Facebook page and our website, loganwritersfestival.com.au. Our website.
Yes, it is.
And Facebook. Come track us down there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fantastic.
No
and I'm sure we could talk for hours more.
Books.
This is so easy.
Books, reading, writing. Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome.